Hey guys, this is going to be the Hoth 13 Introduction to Deployment workshop, and I'm Daniel. This is basically like how to do deployment for the project that you should be done with. So, first we're going to go through like what is deployment, what is the difference between local host versus production. We're going to use a tool called Vercel, how to deploy your first app, what environment variables are, and how to do full stack deployment, which I imagine many of your projects will be. So first, hello hackers. Today we're going to be covering deployment and why it's important and how it works. So first of all, what is deployment and why is it important? You should hopefully be finished with your project by now on your computer, but right now only your laptop will be able to see it. You should be running it on a local port, such as like localhost 3000 or like 5000, or sometimes it's like 5700. But essentially, right now, only your computer is able to access it because you're running it locally and it's not accessible for other people open on the internet. And the process of deployment is essentially opening the doors and allowing your project to be viewed and by other people completely through the internet. So it gives you access to having your project become shareable. It allows other users to test it. It allows you to share it on your portfolio, and it also gives you production level experience, which is really important for whether you're interested in jobs, research, or any just like practical implementation of software. So, what are the differences between local host and production? Local host is going to be your local development. Obviously, if you have something that isn't complete or something that like exposes a lot of specific and private details, you don't necessarily want that to be open to the internet and have anyone to have access to, but you might need to be able to run it and test data through it on your own machine. So, local host allows you to run and test all of your software on your own computer. And the benefits of it is that it's really fast, it's not public, and in my like specific example, this is the port that I'm running it on is 5173. It depends what tools you're using though. The difference between production environment is it's typically hosted on cloud servers such as AWS, Vercel, or different things like that. It is publicly accessible. Real users can visit, and then for our example, like you can call it myapp.vercel.app, and theoretically, like anyone should be able to use it. So one of the reasons that I'm doing this workshop using Vercel is because Vercel is a big cloud platform built for front end and full stack applications. I've used Vercel a lot, and it is one of the primary tools that a lot of people that compete in hackathons use. It has a ton of advantages because it's very easy to use. It doesn't require a lot of like in-depth initial knowledge. It allows fast building. It has easy GitHub iterations. It automatically has like security with HTTPS, and most importantly, it's free for all students. So it's not something that's going to break the bank. And the reasons that a lot of hackathons use Vercel is because you can do it within 30 seconds. It's very easy. You're also able to preview future commits that you're going to do while you're like coding and then saving everything through Git and GitHub. It doesn't require you to have any server setup or server domain knowledge on your own. And it works very well with React and Next.js, regardless of what software you guys are using or what language you're using. So the primary pipeline of like any project or anything inside of a hackathon is first you're gonna type everything and code up your own project. Then you're eventually gonna store all of your software and all of your files on GitHub. And this is like basically a good like Google Drive essentially to store your progress and to also allow other people to collaborate on it. Eventually, you're going to use Vercel to help you with deployment, and then finally, it will be access open on the internet for anyone to see, anyone to use. And the steps to deploy it is pushing your code to GitHub, detecting the updates through Vercel, building your app, and deploying it globally. So I imagine that this is a lot of information. It's a lot to take in, especially as someone who maybe has never deployed anything before. So it's very okay to feel completely overwhelmed. There is a lot of information, but as long as you follow all the steps, and I'll be going through a demo at the end, it shouldn't be too overwhelming. And you should be able to access and deploy your own creation that anyone can see. So maybe right now you feel like these monkeys, but hopefully you'll be feeling better soon. So, in case you haven't been using GitHub already, there is another presentation that goes over how to use Git and GitHub, and it's really informative and it covers basically like the primary reasons on why you use it and how to use it. If you haven't been using GitHub this whole time, you can kind of just shove these commands on the left side of the screen to inside the command terminal in your repository for your project, and it will automatically just do a first commit and push it to like the main branch inside of GitHub, but GitHub is essentially a storage software. That way you're able to iterate, go forward and go back and see the different implementations of the code that you've written. It also allows you to see the progress that you've made. It allows other people to work on it together at the same time. And it's just a great tool. It will also make deploying much, much easier. So deploying with Vercel is like very, very, very simple. You just have to go to the website, sign in with your GitHub repository, and then, or sign in with GitHub, and then all of your repositories should be there. You can just select the one that you want, and then you just watch it build. It is a very, very simple process. So hopefully you don't feel too overwhelmed, but if you do, like I will essentially be holding your hand through it because we are going to deploy a project from my computer afterwards. So some like basic notes on how Vercel works is it does auto configurations and it detects what type of framework you're using, whether it be React, Next.js, or anything like that. And then it will automatically run all the build commands that it needs to, like npm run build. And then it will have everything inside of an output folder. And you'll also be able to live see if things are going wrong and why things are going wrong, because it will allow you to actively debug and see if there are any issues versus your local environment versus a production level environment. And then this is obviously less important, but I think at the fundamental, it's very important to still understand the basics of how software like this works, because eventually you might need to build something like this for a company or for a research lab, or maybe just on your own. It's something that you individually could be passionate about. But the way that Vercel's builds work is it installs all the dependencies, runs the build commands, optimizes the assets, and then deploys on a CDN, which is a content delivery network. And that allows your app to be deployed worldwide. So kind of like demonstrated on the right side, I believe this is how Cloudflare's CDN works. But it has an origin server and then it has a series of edge servers. And then that way, regardless of where you are, you're able to access it. And your app is copied worldwide across all of these like edge servers that they all access it from the origin server. And this means that like someone that's in like Korea or China is able to access your tool from or your website from the US without a ton of like latency or any issues. Your app will continue to be fast and easy for them to access. So one of the big beauties of Vercel is while after you've deployed it one time, any changes or iterations that you want to make after you do a git push will automatically redeploy unless you disable that feature. But that means that if you want to test if your deployment works and then have iterations that you make like last second touches before the end of a hackathon or just for a personal project, if you want to see what it would look like, um, all you have to do is like run git push on either GitHub desktop or through the command line, and it will automatically like redeploy on your web page. And then Vercel also allows something called preview URLs, and this allows you to essentially like preview each pull request. And this is really good for team collaboration or testing before merges, because sometimes two people will either be working on the same branch, or I mean, not the same branch, either two people will be working on the same file, or there will be some merge conflict that happens if you guys are working on different branches trying to merge it. And by attempting to merge it and seeing a preview of what will happen, this will allow you to make sure that when it's deployed, there's nothing that's like messing it up as after it gets merged, right? You want to sometimes people just like they just click through all of the merge conflicts and it's like, okay, it'll probably be fine. But by doing a preview, it allows you to see if it really will be fine before you just have open access and like, I don't know, you don't want the world to see your mistake, right? This is something really important for specifically for full stack applications, but also if you're using any API keys. Not every single project is going to be using like different API keys, but I know some projects will probably be using, I don't know, like a weather API or maybe like finance API. Spotify has an API, and a big one that a lot of people have been using lately is one through like Gemini or OpenAI, where you're able to call on their large language models. So this is really important because if you don't define your environment variables, one, your production level software and when you run it through Vercel won't be able to call it, but also if you have it defined like generally inside of your like GitHub, it will be publicly accessible and other people will be able to see it. And you don't want that because if you have like your credit card hooked up to your OpenAI account, then someone could take the API key and then just like start calling stuff through your account and then you would get charged for it. So it's really, really important that you keep your environment variables hidden. Um, so the way that you have them locally is typically that they will be in like a .env folder, and then your git ignore will make sure that it doesn't get saved through GitHub. And this is good and bad for us. It's good because that means that none of it will be like publicly accessible. No one is able to access your environment variables. But that also means that when you deploy on Vercel, you're unable to see, or Vercel is unable to see the environment variables that it needs to call on. And this is very easily remediated. I think it's remediated. It's okay. Um, Basically on the Vercel dashboard, there's going to be a series of environment variables and you can add them. So it could be your database URL, your OpenAI key, any new key that you have. And this will effectively allow you to still have all of your environment variables hidden while allowing them to be used on the production level website. So another important thing is going to be front end and back end deployment. Front end deployment is typically just fast CDN delivery, and it has static assets. But back end deployment is a little bit different because it's going to hold all of your functions, your APIs, and it runs a lot more heavy on servers. The front end is a lot of the design based elements, and it's important to do, especially with Vercel, two separate deployments with them because it allows uh, you basically have to have them run separately. That's what's important. And full stack deployment is specifically on Vercel, your front end and your back end. That is the full stack. This is a complex diagram if you wanted to build a full stack deployment on your own without Vercel, and this is what a full stack developer does. I know it looks really, really complex on the outside, but if you look at every single item individually, it's not super difficult. And a lot of these things are covered in classes at UCLA, like databases is 143, operating systems is 111, virtual environments are covered in, I want to say, I think in CS 148. So a lot of these topics are covered in like a bunch of different things. Like JavaScript and CSS is covered in 35L. Um, and I believe you also touch APIs in 35L. So a lot of these, I know it looks like a lot of different like terms kind of thrown into your face, but when you look at them individually, none of them are super complex. And building a web application allows you to kind of touch each of them at a surface level, and it gives you a really, really strong experience for if you work at a full or if you work full time at a company or even at an internship in software development. These are just a few of the common pitfalls that you might face. So if you miss an environment variable, then it will cause like different parts of your websites to, or different parts of your web application to not work. So if you have your environment variable and it doesn't have access to like your database, then you won't be able to log in, you won't be able to call upon any of the data, and you also won't be able to like read or write any of the data into your database. You also could call the wrong build folder. This is something that is a lot more prevalent with full stack projects because you might import the full project instead of the front end and back end separately. Another thing is you could have a path error. You might just import the wrong repository. That's another common mistake, or have a node mismatch, which is a little bit less likely, but it's another possible common pitfall. Um, any common pitfalls that you, or any pitfalls that you might face, there's obviously like a lot of officers in ACM that are there and willing and able to help you. So now we're going to go on to the demo. Uh, yeah, so we're going to go back over here. And then we're also going to go here. So right now I have a project and this is like a full stack project. So we're going to run my client, which is the front end. And then if I click on this, I'll be able to access the front end. And then we are also going to run backend client, which is the server, right? And now my website completely works, but it's all run locally. And if I want to, I can log in and I can completely sign into my web application. And it has all of my data. It has every single thing that I have stored in my account. And if I want to, I can log out of my account. All right, but this is my project. And let's say this is something that I want to be able to deploy. So the first step that I'm going to do is right now, it really doesn't matter if I have that running or not running, but that is how my project looks. What I'm going to do is go to Vercel. So you can just go to vercel.com. I'm already logged into my account, but if you just log into your account and then log in through GitHub, it should automatically connect to your GitHub. And it should have access to all of your repositories. Because mine is a full stack project, we're gonna have to deploy both the front end and the back end. So I'm gonna start with project and then go to go to capsule and import it. All right, and we're gonna start with just the front end. And right now, if I import it like directly, it will import the entire packet or it will import the entire project, which is not necessarily what I want to do. I want to just start with um, importing the front end, which is going to be the client, and then we're going to do deploy, and it will take a second. Okay, awesome. And let me go to my dashboard. This is going to be important later, but I'm just going to adjust the domain name to something uh, like this. Um, all right. And if I go to this web page, I'll be able to access my like project, Capsule Mocha Vercel app. And now anyone that goes to this URL is able to access it. But if you see something right now, my backend is not deployed. So if I try to log in, I'm not able to. Login completely failed, and that is my correct username and password, which means that I'm going to have a very, very big problem. It's not able to call any of my databases or any. It's not able to call anything because it's all saved in a .env file in my project. So this is where environment variables come in, and this is also important because we're also going to deploy the backend of my project on Vercel. So we're going to do project, and then we're going to go to capsule import, and then instead of the root directory, we're going to go to not that one. I'm gonna go to server, just on Express.js, and then we're just gonna call this capsule backend. All right, awesome. Now that just means that every single like backend thing that I had in my project is now also deployed. And you'll see right here that my backend is deployed and my front end is deployed. I'm actually also going to change the name of my domain of my backend to backend. I'm going to call this Kai. That's not super important. It's just the way that I have my environment variables set out for later. So I also have this written down in my notes, but it should be accessible from your project. Let's say I go to my project right over here, and then I go to my like git ignore files, and then I go to my environment. I'm able to see what's ignored by my git ignore, and then also all of the things that I'll need to have be called, but are not currently accessible in GitHub. So in my client, I have this is essentially calling the backend. So my client is calling the backend, and when I run it locally, it's getting called at 4,000. But when I run the project on Vercel, it can't call the local host. So I'm going to need it to call the backend instead, and the backend is deployed at a different URL. And then for the client or for the server, I have all of my like information, like my MongoDB key, and then the port that it's running on. And then also this is the other way around where uh, the client is calling the backend, but the backend also needs to know like where it's getting called to. So instead of the origin being localhost, that will also have to be changed. But luckily for me, I have this all written down here. So let me go to capsule and then let me go to environment variables, which I believe are in settings, but you can also just look it up in the top left. And then we're going to add one environment variable to the front end. And this one's like just for my project. Different projects are going to have different things. Um, so our key is going to be Vite API URL, and then our value is going to be the URL of our backend, which is why I ended up changing it before to backend Kai. And then we're going to save it and redeploy. Then we're going to go to our backend, and then we're also going to go to our environment variables. Okay, there we go. Our environment variables, and then we're going to import these ones. So client origin is one of them. That's important. This is how our client knows, or this is how our server knows what our client is. And this is also why I changed the name of our front end URL to Mocha afterwards. This is my MongoDB key, which is how it knows to call the database. And that's something that is like specific to my project. But if I go to like my MongoDB website, um, I'm able to find it somewhere in here. I believe it's tied to clusters and then connect, and it's in here if you go to drivers. So let me just copy and paste this one over too. And then finally my secret key. And then let me redeploy my project one more time. Okay, awesome. Now if I go back to my URL, so if I go to the front end and then go visit the app, which is the same as it is before, Capsule Mocha app, and then go log in, I should now be able to log in the same way that I was able to before on my local host. And now I can access everything. And not only can I access everything, anyone now from anywhere in the world is able to go to this URL and make their own project. So that's essentially how deployment works. I don't know, did I add any other slides? Oh, I added one more. Yeah. Happy hacking. Hopefully you learned something new. Uh, I think being able to deploy stuff is pretty cool. You can also, oh, I guess this is another good demonstration. Uh, just as like another proof that it works. I didn't just like scam you guys. If I go, I type it capsule mocha vercel.app, I'm able to access it from my phone. And I can log in and I'm able to access all of my like every single thing on my app. All right. Awesome sauce.